The most common ones people are doing, beef or bison. Okay, simple. If you got another red meat, if you're like, well, goat is a red meat, I can get that easy, or mutton or lamb or whatever. Is it a red meat? And you go, yes. Okay, there's your concept and principle. You understand? I'm not going to go through every red meat in existence. That's kindergarten stuff. Red meat. Look it up. This is another thing. Anything we're going to go over right here. Let's say I talk about beans and you say, I don't feel good on beans. Then don't freaking eat them. There was a fairly popular person out there who did the low vitamin A diet, and she was mainly doing red meat and beans. And after a year of not getting along with beans, then she blamed the diet. When very early on in the Love Your Liver articles, I said, if you don't feel good on beans and you just cannot make them work, then don't freaking eat them. You want to see the user error that's out there? This would be a big thing. Okay. It's kind of frustrating when people blame the program when I simply say, if you don't feel good on a food, don't eat it. Now, some people's logic is challenged and they think, well, somebody said the other day, well, I feel great when I eat liver, or I feel great when I eat eggs. Many toxins are stimulants. Stimulants generally make people feel good. Do you wonder why 90% of the Western world is addicted to caffeine? And chocolate, which has both caffeine and copper in it. Copper is a very stimulating toxic metal. And people go, I feel good, I get a buzz. Why do you think so many people eat spicy foods? Because it stimulates adrenaline and cortisol. It's a painkiller, and it's a stimulant. Of course they feel good for a little while. We are not that dumb here. We do not just eat things that feel good, or as the saying goes, crackheads love crack. That doesn't mean it's good for them. So don't twist not feeling like you don't want to feel bad on it. This is like via negativa, right? We don't eat foods we feel bad on. Not that difficult. Not that difficult. But just because if there's something that doesn't fit in this framework and you're like, but I feel so good when I eat it, you're probably addicted to a stimulating effect of it. Okay. Now, but this doesn't, if you have cravings for a food, like real cravings, that's addiction, that's toxicity. Like, I love meat. I am not addicted to meat. Will I feel better if I eat meat daily? Yes. Could I fast and not eat any meat? Sure. Do I get withdrawals from not eating meat? No. Two big things about drug effects: toxicity, addictive effects, tolerance. Over time, you need more of it to get the same effect. Have you noticed all these egg people eating more and more eggs? Tolerance. Withdrawal. If you don't eat it, you feel bad, like you feel specifically worse, or you have to eat the food to feel normal on a very regular basis, or you have big highs and lows. Those are drug effects. And we can see those with toxic foods like liver and eggs and stuff like that. So, meat, red meats, poultry, chicken, turkey. Of course, let me back up. We want all of this stuff as organic as possible. I'm not going to get into like the obsessing over the minuscule of what the poultry's fed or the grass fed. I'm not going to get into that because that's just, you can obsess to death over this stuff. If you live in a city and you can't go to the farmer's market like once a week or twice a week, or you don't have a giant freezer in your small apartment, you have to do the best with what you can. I'm a realist here. I'm not sitting there going, move to the boonies and raise all your own animals and slaughter them yourself. And we're not doing that for most people. Most people live in cities. And most of your influencers are probably lying about what they eat most of the time. So many on the internet are out there lying. So anyway, poultry. Now I'm going to tell you, if every once in a while you want to eat the chicken skin, go ahead. Give me a break. The chicken skin poofas. No, just if you want to eat it once in a while, just eat some, okay? It's probably good for your soul. That's why kids like to eat it so much. So anyway, there's your meat. Now, how much protein should a person get in a day? I'm not going to give you like this many grams per pound and da-da-da. Okay, minimum. And ladies, you need to pay the most attention to this. Minimum of 50 grams, 50 grams of protein a day, total from all sources. Okay. Some moron out there is going to twist my words and say, Dr. Smith says you only need 50 grams of protein a day. I'm sorry. If you actually think that's what I just said, you're not ready for this work. Minimum means minimum, and you are welcome to go above it. We have people eating a pound or 2 pounds or even 3 pounds of meat a day on this program. Am I saying that that's bad? No, if that's what they feel good on, then do that. Or they feel best on, I should say. Not just, I feel good on it. So, minimum of 50 grams a day of protein from all sources. Everything counts. Now, do I think muscle meat protein is the best protein you can get? It's the most bioavailable. It's the most concentrated. It's the easiest source. And it's tasty? Yes. So if you were thinking of just poultry or red meat as your source of protein, if you did that, that's like 7 ounces of muscle meat, basically. There's about 7 grams of protein in an ounce of muscle meat. So 7 times 7 is about 50. And then you'd be eating other foods too. Okay? So, can you go over that? Sure, absolutely. Are you going to probably feel better if you go over that? Sure. Where did I get this number from? Well, I'm not a WHO promoter by any means, but the World Health Organization says that in like third world countries where they are starving from protein energy malnutrition, they suggest a minimum of 50 grams of protein a day. And what are they feeding them? Like cornmeal. They're never going to get there. As I've done before, rickets is a meat deficiency disease, and all these other, beriberi is a meat deficiency disease. I've done episodes on these. I think that nearly all humans do best on meat of varying amounts. Some of you may be, and some of you may know people who seem to do okay long-term on like vegan diets or very close to vegan diets. Okay, to each their own. Like, so I'm going to sit there and I'm going to say, if you want to be a vegan or close to it, 50 grams of total protein a day from all sources. Okay, there's your protein. So now let's get into beans. Beans are a very good part of this diet because they do have a lot of protein by themselves and they have a lot of soluble fiber. They are basically the highest soluble fiber foods out there. Soluble fiber binds to toxic bile in your guts and it helps you poop it out. Holds onto it so you can poop it out. It also feeds your gut bacteria, particularly your bifidobacteria. Does everybody do great on beans? No. Am I saying you have to eat beans at every meal? No. Do I think beans in the diet, if you tolerate them, is a good thing? Yeah, some people come to me after getting in the program. They tell me giving them the okay to eat beans was the greatest thing that anybody in health ever did for them. Some people they just say, I just keep trying beans and I just don't tolerate them. Okay, don't eat them. Like there is nothing on this diet that you have to eat. But I'm sure you can find choices within it for things that work. Okay. So generally with soluble fiber foods in general. Here's the concept and principle. I don't think most people need to go over 30 grams of fiber a day, nor do I think it's beneficial. I think you get into diminishing returns and potentially issues if you go over 30 total grams of soluble fiber a day. If you don't understand what soluble fiber, there's insoluble fiber, there's soluble fiber. Did I say insoluble? No, I didn't say insoluble. You don't see why this is not just like, here's your food list. We're too intelligent here for that. So, soluble fiber, generally a max of 30 grams a day. Am I including supplements in this? If you were taking apple pectin, or you were taking sun fiber, or you were taking other like psyllium. Did I already say that? I don't know. Oat bran, whatever. Soluble fiber, figure it out. If you don't know how to count your grams of protein or how to figure out your grams of soluble fiber, this might not be the place for you. You can Google it. How to figure out how much fiber's in my food, how to figure out how much protein I'm eating. You can Google these things, folks. So that's your beans. Now, here's another thing you can do. Let's say you're not sure if you tolerate beans or don't. Okay, you remember how I said start slow? That's a concept, principle that we use. I learned this from another naturopathic doctor out there. He said, if you're going to start eating beans, but let's say you get too farty from them at the start. They are the magical fruit, after all. Well, here's what they suggest. Don't start the first day with a giant bowl of beans and get all gassy and farty and then say, I don't tolerate beans. No, you just dumped a ton in there. Start with like 2 tablespoons of beans a day for 2 weeks. See if your gut biome slowly shifts over those 2 weeks. And then after the 2 weeks, then you can start eating more and see if you tolerate it. If you get to the end of the 2 weeks and you're just like, nothing's gotten better, then either your gut biome needs some help, which I have a whole section on probiotics in the Love Your Liver program. If you don't tolerate beans, you probably have a bifido deficiency. And this is very common in carnivores and ex-keto people because they don't eat enough carbs and they don't eat any soluble fiber. And so their bifido die and they get a gut dysbiosis. And they're not getting rid of their toxic bile because they have nothing to bind it. This is why we want soluble fiber. If you haven't seen my Basics of Toxic Bile Theory video, number 71, you should watch that one too. That's where you could start. If you want to know why all this works, that's where we begin with. So, yeah, just introduce beans slowly, try them out. I'm going to be honest here. Beans are part of the program. If I eat beans too often, I don't feel great. If I have them a couple times a week, 2-3 times a week, I do fine. So that's what I do. Imagine that. What a concept. I don't eat beans every single meal, and I'm not going to. But if you feel great doing it, or you feel better doing it, that's great. Now, what about, let's say you're coming to this from carnivore or keto, and you're like, I don't tolerate soluble fiber. First, you're going to try the different ones. There's the multiple ones out there. There's psyllium, there's apple pectin, there's sun fiber. You can start with a pinch. I have a whole article linked on the sun fiber bag about how to start with it. Slowly. Imagine doing these things slowly. Walk before you run. What a concept. Crazy. So, that's beans. Which beans? Well, the lighter the color of the bean, the less polyphenols and potential vitamin A it has in it, like red kidney beans. That's got a lot of stuff in it, but it's only in the skin. So when you think of beans, if you look on the inside, right, they're generally whitish, which is a good thing on this program. We like whitish foods. That tends to mean that they have fewer plant toxins in them. So the lighter the outside of the bean, the less toxins are in the outside of the bean. Navy beans are fairly whitish. Kidney beans, pinto beans are tan. Those are pretty good. Black beans do have a lot of polyphenols, but I'm not going to, as the joke goes, I'm not going to kick the polyphenols out. I'm not going to kick the black beans out just because of that. Okay. It worked for Grant. So we look at what works. And Grant has his vitamin A levels down to below lab detection limits, and he's been eating black beans the whole time. So it's not that big of a problem. But I want you to think about the rest of his diet. The muscle meat and the rice has almost no polyphenols in it otherwise. So he's reduced it everywhere else. So that's beans. Okay, now let's get into grains. Oh, are there any super beans? No. Okay, let me back up about my beans. Okay, by beans, I do not mean peanuts. Peanuts are full of mold. I don't mean green beans. I don't mean peas. I don't mean yellow peas. I don't mean green peas. Those are quite high in vitamin A. And they don't bring enough to the table. Peas and green beans and peanuts, most of you can realize, are different from the normal beans that you cook. They're different. So we don't put them in the same category. Like I'm talking about when you can buy a can of beans or you buy dried beans. That's what I'm talking about. So do you need a list of beans? No, I just told you. Normal cooked type beans, and the lighter in color they are, generally the better. And we assume, yes, giant ass at the front of that word. We assume that there's about 5 grams of fiber, soluble fiber, 5 grams of soluble fiber in a half a cup of cooked beans. Okay. About 5 grams of soluble fiber in a half a cup of cooked beans. There you go. Sorry, let me back up onto, and I do not like kidney beans. Kidney beans have a lectin in them that if the kidney beans are not processed properly, they have killed people before. So I generally try to avoid foods that have a lectin that could kill people. I think that's a pretty good rule, So back to meats. I skipped the meats you don't want to eat. We avoid pork. Pork is a filthy animal. Pork is full of vitamin A, even though it's not registered on the USDA charts. It's got retinaldehyde and retinoic acid in it, which they don't measure. Lard factor is another term for vitamin A, and I've been over this in other videos. There's so much vitamin A in lard that they called it lard factor, and they're like, this has vitamin A properties. And then they tested it, and they basically figured out it had vitamin A activity. Oh, but the USDA doesn't have it showing up on their charts because it's retinaldehyde or retinoic acid, which they don't measure. They just want to measure retinol. Same thing happens in the casein that is used in vitamin A deficiency studies. They say there's no retinol in it, but there's plenty of retinaldehyde and retinoic acid in it. That's why if you look at that casein, the vitamin A-free casein, it's yellow in color when normal casein is white. When they processed it, they freed up the vitamin A from the casein. It sticks to casein, and then they oxidized it into retinaldehyde or retinoic acid. And their little measurement tools don't measure that specifically, so they miss it. So we don't eat pork. There's a reason why people have generally avoided pork for thousands of years. You can say religious reasons, but I like to think that before refrigeration, pork went really bad, really quick, and made people really sick. And it's full of parasites too. So don't eat pork. We have other reasons than just vitamin A to avoid certain foods, like the next one, fish and shellfish. We do not eat fish and shellfish on this program. We definitely don't use any fish oil. We wouldn't pee on cod liver oil if it was burning to death. I'm in a good mood today. So don't eat fatty fish, fatty liver juice from fish. That's what cod liver oil is. That's what these other fish liver oils. Don't eat skate liver oil. I mean, don't eat fatty liver oil. from fish or shellfish or anything else. Okay. Then we have, so fish and shellfish, why do we avoid them? It's full of mercury, folks. I can tell you how often you eat fish or shellfish from the mercury level on your hair test. It's not hard to do. And if you eat sushi, oh, it's bad. It's really bad. Now, I want you to also think about all the fat-soluble toxic things that humans are putting into the waters. And fish and shellfish breathe and marinate in that toxic soup all day long. Where do you think they put those fat-soluble toxins? In the fish oil and in their liver. Don't. Then we have, what else do we not eat? Well, we don't eat egg yolks or egg whites. We'll get into that. Why do we not eat egg yolks? Because it's full of vitamin A and choline, which is the perfect combination to shove vitamin A as quickly as possible into your liver and body fat. And then egg whites are full of sulfur. Sulfur slows detox. It slows ALDH, which then it backs up more aldehydes into your system. And that does things like depleting B1. Polyphenols also do that. Polyphenols have been shown to slow ALDH, which then it backs up more aldehydes due to the bottleneck. And then that depletes things like B1. If you want to watch my berry episode, that's a couple episodes back. So this is why it's hard to do all this, because there's so many concepts that intertwine with this. It's not just vitamin A. So that was we've done beans and meat. Oh, we don't do dairy. Dairy is, look, I'm not even going to go into the raw versus pasteurized versus homogenized. I don't have to do any of that, because dairy is excessively high in calcium for humans. It's got 4 times more, when we're talking cow dairy, 4 times more calcium in it than human milk. And then people go, but we need that calcium for bones. And I go, says who? The Rockefellers, who are at the base of all the dairy research. Vitamin A was created partially due to funding by the Rockefellers to figure out how to sell people more dairy. So your dairy obsession, if you have one, is a Rockefeller-funded campaign. Okay? I don't even have to go into raw versus pasteurized. It's full of calcium, way too much calcium for humans. And then you go, well, how did the cows build their giant bones? Just eating grass. Well, maybe you don't need to suckle from cows to get your calcium, because maybe we don't need that much. Maybe we're very good at recycling. Here's an idea. Let's say you have an osteoclast, a bone cutting cell. Cuts out a bone cell, and then the osteoblast, the bee, goes in and builds a new bone cell. So the osteoclast goes and chops up the old bone cell, and then there's calcium floating around. Why can't the body just reuse that calcium and put it into a new bone cell? I mean, if you got too much calcium in your blood, your body will take that calcium and shove it into your arteries. It'll shove it into your brain. It'll shove it into your heart. It'll shove it into your joints. Your body builds bone spurs. I mean, when you say you ran out of cartilage in your knee, like it's bone on bone, the cartilage didn't disappear, folks. The cartilage was turned into bone. That's how it grows together from the bottom up. Bone spurs build from the bone out, the tendons or ligaments. When you hear about bone on bone in your knees, it's because you're calcifying the cartilage from the top down and the bottom up. The cartilage didn't disappear. It just calcified. So raw dairy has too much vitamin A in it and too much vitamin D in it, whether it's pasteurized or fortified or not. Okay. How do I know this? I worked with a raw dairy co-op in Phoenix during my medical school days. Somehow the raw milk didn't fix me. It probably just contributed to my vitamin A toxicity, which is why I'm here today. The state required the raw dairy to be tested for vitamin A and vitamin D content so it could be sold. the raw dairy always tested okay. Like it had plenty of vitamin A in it and plenty of vitamin D in it, so they didn't have to fortify it. So there's plenty in it. So you take vitamin D by mouth in the dairy, and you take vitamin A by mouth from the dairy, and you add excessive calcium to it. What does vitamin A and vitamin D cause? Calcium problems, hypercalcemia, too much calcium in the blood. So then do you think adding excess calcium to that is going to be like throwing gasoline on a fire? Yeah. I mean, okay, here's the thing. If somebody eats an absolute shite diet and they sub out some of the shite food with raw dairy, could that be a move in a good direction? Yes, you stop microwaving your food. That's a move in a good direction. You're still heating your food. You're just doing it in a different way. But is it better for you? Yes. You can do all sorts of things that are better for you. And people go, oh my gosh, this got better. This got better. Does that mean it's necessarily a good long-term thing? No, it does not. There's still problems with it. You want to drink your raw dairy? Go ahead. I don't care. Then later you can join all the people in the program who thought raw dairy was the answer too, and they figured out that it wasn't. And same with eggs, and same with, we do not eat organ meats. We do not eat kidneys. We do not eat liver. Do not eat filter organs, detox organs. The two worst ones, liver and kidneys. Don't eat kidney fat. Oh my God. What do they call that? Suet? Where do you think the kidney stores its fat-soluble toxins? Why do you think people are getting fatty liver? Don't eat the fat around detox organs either. Now, people then say, well, what about other organ meats that are different, like heart or tongue or whatever? If it's here's a concept. Is a tongue muscle meat? Yes. Did I say muscle meats are okay? Yes. Is the heart a filter organ, or is it a muscle? It's a muscle. So therefore, is it muscle meat? Yes. These are the concepts and principles that you just simply need to know. That's it. Is it a muscle? Okay. Is it a detox organ? Don't eat it. Here's the thing about heart, though. A lot of heart you might see, the fat on it might be quite yellow. Is that probably a good idea to eat? No, don't eat yellow fat for the most part. I mean, yellow fat, generally bad. Like yellow fat on a heart, lots of vitamin A. Butter, it's yellow. Where do we store vitamin A? Oh, in the fat. Oh. Now, does this mean that white fat is totally okay? No. You ever cook bacon? Looks white at the start and it looks yellow when you're done. You oxidize vitamin A, it gets more yellow. That doesn't mean it wasn't there in the first place. So, sorry, I don't have my my chat pulled up. I'm in a mood today, boy. And if I look a little tired, I did just have a week vacation off. I was staying up a little late. Lots of things happening these days. So, okay, so what have we done? Meats and grain or beans. Okay, so let's go into grains. I don't people obsess over this. First of all, the highest soluble fiber grains are, number one is barley. Number two is oats. Oats are much easier to get. Barley has, so before you get into, everybody wants to eat barley right off the bat because I say it's got more fiber than just about anything. Most of the fiber in barley is insoluble. Even though it's still the highest soluble fiber food you can get, most of the fiber in barley is insoluble. So if that tells you how much fiber is in it, it's obscene. Now, let me explain something about soluble fiber since we've covered beans and we're into the grains now. Soluble fiber induces bile dumping. If you haven't seen my toxic bile theory thing, you may be confused at the start. But so your body dumps bile. This bile, bad, can go back into your bloodstream. Good is it goes into your gut, and we would like to poop it out. So bile, this is the hard part for some people to understand. You have to get rid of the bile to truly detox. Bile is your liver's poop. You want it to go into your guts and then to have it bind to things like soluble fiber or charcoal and then poop it out so it leaves your body. Okay? That's what you want. So bile dumping is the way you detox. Now, if you're here listening to me and you have health issues, some of your bile dumps is leaking into your bloodstream. Bile is by definition the most toxic fluid in your entire body. It leaks into your bloodstream. It can go anywhere and everywhere in your body and then causes you problems based on genetics, your nutrient deficiencies, the toxins that are in the bile. Like, there's all sorts of different things as to why your diseases show up in certain areas. But it's all the same root cause. It is the toxic bile leaking into your blood. Okay? So, bile is the cause of your problems, and it is part of the solution to your problems. Do you understand the implications of this? Bile is the cause of your health problems leaking into your blood. Bile is the solution to your health problems by getting rid of it. When you eat soluble fiber, the soluble fiber induces a bile dump. Okay? Soluble fiber also adsorbs or soaks up bile, so you can poop it out. The triggering of the bile dump, so think about this. Some people, when they dump bile from soluble fiber, right? There's a bile dump variable. There's a bile soaking up variable. So with some people, the soluble fiber induces the bile dump, but the soaking up amount that it does for them, it soaks up the bile and it doesn't, so not as much leaks into their system, and they feel better as they eat more soluble fiber because the soaking up is more than the dump. Does that make sense? Whereas some people, they eat soluble fiber and the dump part is bigger than the soaking up part. So you have extra bile floating around that leaks into your system and you don't feel good from eating soluble fiber. So soluble fiber can make, if it's too much, can make some people feel worse. If they're getting more of the adsorption effect of it, they feel better. For people who cannot deal with these like two sides of things, this is not the place for you until you can do that. Everybody's a car, and everybody's a different model of car. All the cars out there, they run on gasoline, they need their oil, they need their tune-ups, they need the right parts in them. They're all basically the same machine, but they use different things to function best. Okay, so it's not just like everybody's different. No. There's a reason why we use this framework with people, and they adjust it to themselves, and then they do really well. If you're not willing to adjust it, if you're like, Doc, tell me what to eat. No. You're an adult, and I don't have the time to hold your hand through all of this. You're just going to have to try things and go, do I feel better or do I feel worse? Here's another thing you can do to test foods or meals. It's amazing. You can use your camera these days, for your phone camera these days, for so many things. You eat something, or you're about to eat something. You take a picture of it with your phone. A half hour later, set an alarm. Take a picture of either a thumbs up, you feel good from eating that, or a thumbs down, you feel bad from eating it. And then later on, you can go back through your pictures and it'll be, I mean, make sure you don't take any pictures in between the food and the thumbs up or thumbs down. And you go back and you look and you go, well, okay, I see a pattern here. Whenever I eat X food, I don't feel good. Over and over and over again. Okay, maybe I shouldn't eat that food. Or if you look and you go, well, wow, I keep seeing thumbs up every time after I eat meat and oats or whatever. That's probably a pretty good food. Okay. So there's that. So barley, back to barley. Barley is like black belt grain. And what I mean by that, I've said this before, like lactoferrin is like black belt supplement. And what I mean by black belt is if you're coming into this and you're toxic and you have health issues, you're a white belt. And if you walk into the dojo and you walk up to the master black belt and you say, I want to fight you to prove how tough I am and how awesome I am and how much pain I can take. And you go and you try the black belt grain and it kicks your ass because you dump so much soluble fiber you dump so much bile, sorry. The soluble fiber triggers you to dump so much bile and it's so toxic that you kick your own ass. It is your fault. Not my fault. I warn everybody about these black belt things. I have a whole website, our whole page on my website telling people how to start slow on lactoferrin. I have a whole page on my website telling people to start slow on sun fiber. You go out, if you are one of those sledgehammer people and you're just impatient and greedy and you decide to try to detox faster than anybody else ever has before, let me tell you, we've got plenty of people who already did that. You think you're the first person who thought they were the tough guy who was going to prove everybody that you're tougher and going to go faster through this? Yeah, we had plenty of those already. We've been doing this like almost 6 years. You're not the first. You won't be the last. Maybe you can help others to not be stupid, though. As the saying goes, if you're going to be dumb, you better be tough. And what's that saying, especially about young men? Young, dumb, and full of cum. All they do is go hard. How do you think I know this? How do you think I figured all this stuff out? I've been there. I've done it. I will still try things hard for you guys because I'm okay with doing things to myself. I'm okay with sacrificing for the greater cause, and I want to test things hard. Like when I took 20 grams of niacin, flush niacin in a day, 20 grams, 20,000 milligrams. I was listening to Kelsey and she didn't tell me to do that. I chose to do that on my own. And I took 15 grams a day for a week. And one of those days I took 20 to prove that it was not toxic. How else do you get acutely toxic in something? You take a lot of it over a short period of time. So Kelsey, when she came in introducing me to flush niacin, like I listened to her. She showed me the research. I started taking it myself before I ever talked about it. I high dosed it because I'm a person who can take high doses of things generally, and I'm very intuitive about what it causes me. And then finally I went, you know what? Everything Kelsey told me about it seems to be true. Time to introduce it to the program. But back to barley. Barley tastes great. There's different forms. You can get barley in like rolled oats, kind of rolled barley. I think they call them barley flakes. Like barley's great. It's an ass kicker. So if you're going to start it, you're very slow with it. Now, the next one down is oats. Oats are great. Both barley and oats are very high in beta-glucan. And if you want to go see all the research on how beta-glucan can help health issues, go to betaglucan.org. I can't remember if there's a dash in it. Joe, you might want to check before you put up that link. But it's betaglucan.org. I think it's one word. They have so many studies on how beta-glucan helps health that they had to organize it by letters, like letters of conditions. So like go to the cancer section and just read the pages and pages and pages of research. I love when people are out there, soluble fiber is not good for you. I'm like, okay. Sure, buddy. Now, back to the soluble fiber thing. So oats are great. You can do overnight oats. I actually prefer overnight oats. I think that oats are tolerated better when they're cold than when they're hot. I think it has something to do with the lutein being released from the oats. Anyway, Coach's oats, organic Coach's oats are my absolute favorite. Rolled oats are fine. Do I think steel cut oats are better than rolled oats? No, I don't. I think they're a giant pain in the ass, and I don't think they're necessary. Microwave oats, as what's his name? Alton Brown said on a show once, he said microwave oats are not even suitable for horses. Like, they're just garbage. They've been cooked so many times. Don't. Instant oats really is what we're talking about. Like, I mean, not instant. I mean, the ones, the ones that come in like the packets and they're like super finely chopped up. And I'm talking about those. I'm not talking about like organic rolled oats. Fine. Great. Coach's oats. Great. But back to the soluble fiber thing. If you take soluble fiber and you feel worse and or you get more constipated, you are not ready for that soluble fiber or that amount yet. Okay? Could be the type of fiber, like apple pectin's different than psyllium is different than sun fiber, is different than apples, and is different than oats, and is different than barley. These you may get along with one source of soluble fiber better than others. Is different than beans. So if you don't do well with one type of soluble fiber, try others. And if you don't do well with any of them, then you're just not ready yet. You're probably still too toxic, and you may have intrahepatic cholestasis, where when you dump bile, it just goes straight into your system, straight into your bloodstream. That's what intrahepatic cholestasis is. So otherwise, grains, most of the other grains have almost very little soluble fiber in them. I'm not a huge fan of what's the ancient wheat, the einkorn. On the einkorn website, I believe it's actually, I've never seen it in person, but I believe the color of einkorn would kind of give it away. Maybe it's got a little bit of orangish to it, and they brag on the website about the vitamin A content of it. If you ever see like semolina, yellow semolina flour, it's yellow. Okay, wait, let me back up. The colors of vitamin A in plant foods: yellow, orange, red, dark green especially, but generally we try to minimize medium green too. So when we're talking vitamin A, yellow, orange, red, dark green especially, probably medium green too. That means they have quite a bit of vitamin A in them. So what are the good colors with plant foods? We're talking about the part that you eat. White, off-white, light green. Now, for those, so I'll come back to that. But so if you're eating grains and they're yellow, you could make a better choice. If you were like, well, what about yellow corn versus white corn? Duh. Now you know the concept. What about orange carrots versus white carrots? Duh. You know the concept now. Okay, you following me? You just need to know the concept. But Dr. Smith, bananas are yellow on the outside and white on the inside. And I say, what's the part you eat? The inside. What color is it? Whitish. You know now. Okay? So if you're eating grains that are yellow, you could make better choices. Okay? Otherwise, most of the other grains have about the same amount of fiber in them. It's not a big difference. Don't think of basically the big soluble fiber grains are barley and oats. And those would all be, so of the foods that I've been over in terms of, I call them mega foods now, because we're over superfoods. We are like a level above superfoods. If you see something advertised as a superfood, generally avoid it. But what do we tend to consider the mega foods in this world that we've been over already? There would be red meat, beans, real beans, and oats or barley. Then people are going to ask about rice. Well, if you didn't see my berry episode, my thiamine deficiency berry episode, you should go watch that. If you didn't see my glucose and dextrose video after that, you should go watch that. Rice is an arsenic problem. Arsenic depletes your zinc. You can prep rice to get rid of the arsenic. I talk about this in the Love Your Liver program. You can soak it in charcoal for at least a half hour, charcoal water for a half hour before you cook it. I'm going to tell you, for those of you who are out there rinsing, I'm not going to go through a ton about rice here, but if you're just rinsing your rice under the sink, no, that's not adequate. I can show you on hair tests. You can cook it in an excess of water, like you're cooking pasta, and then pour off the water. The water from the rice has to be removed for the arsenic to be removed. You understand that? This is the concept here. The water that you soak the rice or you cook the rice in, that's where the arsenic goes into. That water must be removed to remove the arsenic. If you do the normal rice cooking where you don't rinse it or whatever, you just put it in the right amount of water, like a rice cooker, right? Or an Instant Pot, and you cook it until the water is all disappeared, basically. The arsenic came out in the water in the beginning, and then you cooked off all the water, and then the arsenic just went right back on the outside of the rice. One person some people have done a beef and rice diet as their low vitamin A diet. One gentleman who got rid of his type 1 diabetes on Grant's forum specifically said he got other issues along the way. This is really important. It doesn't mean the vitamin A detox diet failed him. It means that there are problems with rice. Rice is basically chains of glucose. As I went over in my glucose and dextrose stuff, that slows detox. It slows ALDH, which can cause a buildup of aldehydes, which is what berry is. You build up the aldehydes, your B1 binds to it, it depletes your B1, and you have this condition. And what did they, as I went over in that episode, what did they fix? What did they fix berry with for the Japanese military? Beef and barley. Whoa, crazy. As I went over in my scurvy episode, what did they fix? What did they help prevent scurvy with on the boats? Oats. Wow, weird. Oats grab onto vitamin A and toxic bile. So all these things make sense, Some people, when they start the program, they're really, really sensitive to foods and they have to eat rice. Okay, fine. I'm not saying never to eat rice. I'm saying I think over time there's better choices that you can make that don't come with a bunch of arsenic that you have to worry about. Lotus Foods rice is the lowest in arsenic I've seen. It's expensive, but they are the most transparent about their arsenic. They show you the tests. Okay? It's expensive. But if you're not going to prepare your rice and you're just going to be like, screw it, I just want to pay more money and cook it, Lotus Foods, that's your option. Remember, convenience costs money. So, what are we at now? So that's basically grains. If you want to make, if you're going to eat bread, oh my gosh, if you're going to make anything with flour, make sure it's unfortified. Okay, we want everything to be organic here. I'm not going to keep repeating that. Organic flour, unfortified. No niacinamide in it, no added thiamine, no iron, none of that crap in it. I went to I was on vacation and we went out to buy some food at the store so we could eat in the room, and we go to Whole Foods. Almost none of the bread was organic, but the fresh baked stuff they had. You had to search through the ingredient list to find unfortified flour breads. So trying to get organic and unfortified, that can be quite difficult, as many of you probably know. If you're making your bread at home, not hard. But if you're making it, or if you're trying to go out and buy it, you're probably gonna have to choose between organic or unfortified, if you can even find them. So just be aware of that. But if you're going to do breads, I do think sourdough is probably the best. Real sourdough, not yeasty stuff, that is like made sour with ascorbic acid, vitamin C put into it. So I think that's the oats. But can you do rice? Sure, you can do rice. Do I think there's better choices? Yeah, I do. Both for the fiber and to avoid the arsenic. I do think sorry, back to the rice thing. Arsenic depletes zinc. So this gentleman who did beef and rice, could he be arsenic toxic? Sure. Could he have been made more zinc deficient from the arsenic? Sure. Could he have induced a B1 deficiency in himself by slowing his ALDH, using the B1 as an antidote from his system, and then causing himself sort of beriberi-ish type symptoms? Sure. Is rice top of my list? By far, no. Okay. So now we go to fruits. There's not a lot of fruits that we do have mega food fruits. The best ones, apples. Research shows apples are the absolute healthiest fruit out there. Bananas. I'm going to go over grapes and pears. Yeah, pears are kind of but pears are still basically the third healthiest fruit out there. So apples. Apples are the highest soluble fiber fruit. Pectin. So those are very good. Now, some people get into the peeling, to peel or not to peel. That is the question. This is like people getting into the weeds. If you want to eat the apple, however you want to eat it, you try it with peeling and without peeling. See which one you feel better on. Simple as that. If you want it to be the lowest in vitamin A and polyphenols possible, peel it. If you are like me and I feel better when I eat the apple skin. First of all, if you're going to eat apple skin, you better buy organic. And you should still wash the outside of the apples. No, water doesn't clean squat off of produce. Water by itself doesn't clean squat. You can do hydrogen peroxide in the water. You can do one of those fruit and vegetable washes. Make sure you get it all off. You can do baking soda. Wash your produce. Don't trust the store or the farmer. I mean, just wash it. Water doesn't do it, in my opinion. So, apples. Peel them or don't peel them. Do not eat applesauce in the jar from the store. I'm not going to go into all the formaldehyde and all that stuff, but when people worry about pectin. They say, oh, pectin can turn into formaldehyde. Not unless, here's how pectin turns into formaldehyde. Think of it, they're making jarred applesauce you buy at the store that is shelf stable. They seal up the applesauce in a container. They make it airtight, anaerobic, no oxygen. And then they heat it. Heating up pectin in a low to no oxygen environment can turn the pectin into formaldehyde. Is your body is out here low oxygen? No. Are we pasteurizing? Are we getting things up to pasteurization heat when you eat an apple? No. So if you want to make homemade applesauce and you're not going to can it, make your homemade applesauce. Enjoy the heck out of it. Just don't put it in an airtight jar and then heat it up. Same thing with pears. if you're making pear sauce or whatever you might make. So does that mean that jams and jellies that have pectin added that are sealed up and heated, are they going to be making some formaldehyde? Sure. So anyway, apples, best fruit out there by far. Peel or no peel, up to you. Then we get into bananas. Okay, don't eat the peel of bananas. If I got to say that to you, you know, don't eat the peel of bananas. It's yellow and it doesn't taste good. Bananas are amazing, great source of potassium. I eat 2 a day or more. When I don't get them, I just don't feel as good. I need a lot of potassium. I figured this out over the years. So apples and bananas, right? And then we have green grapes. Why do we pick green? Because they have less polyphenols in them. Simple as that. If you want to do the old freezing the grapes, you know, put the grapes in the freezer so you can eat them as like a cold dessert. I mean, you can do that, whatever. I don't do any of that stuff. Organic, of course. And then we have pears. Here's the problem with pears. Overly ripe bananas and overly ripe pears. Some of you have done this where you eat an overly ripe banana, like too brown, or an overly ripe pear where they get really soft. And you either don't feel good in other ways, but especially you get a stomach ache. Or it just turns your stomach after a while. You're just kind of like, oh, I don't feel good after eating that. That's formaldehyde. It's from the ripening, it has started producing formaldehyde. Don't eat your bananas too ripe. Don't eat your pears too ripe. If you want to test out this thing, go ahead, let them get ripe, eat it, and then be like, well, it doesn't feel good. It's fine. Go ahead, test it out. So that's generally the list of fruits. If you're wondering about pomegranates and beets and no, they're full of polyphenols, full of vitamin A. We don't eat them. The list of fruits is very short. The list of vegetables is pretty short too. This is why I don't make a giant food list. So once you know the concepts and principles, you don't need it. So the other thing about fruits and vegetables, the polyphenols. So we talked about the colors of vitamin A, right? Red, yellow, orange, dark green, medium green. What do we want to eat? White, off-white, light green. That's the part that you eat. So if you can peel off the color, like let's say a cucumber, you can peel off the dark green and the inside is white or whitish. You can eat it. Why was I going into that? Oh, polyphenols are the other colors. The purples, the black, like if you're thinking eggplant, like the blackish to purple, the blues, basically any other color. What do we have? Like if we go over Roy G. Biv, right? We got red, orange, yellow, green. Green can be polyphenols, or green is a combination of blue and yellow. Blue would be polyphenols, green or yellow is vitamin A. So you could have multiple things going on to create green. There's also chlorophyll. You don't need to eat chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is not an essential nutrient. And then there's blue, which is a polyphenol, indigo, purplish polyphenol. Do not generally eat the parts of plants that are brightly or darkly or strongly colored. There's your concept and principle. So you don't need to know anything about vitamin A or polyphenols. Don't eat the parts of plants that are brightly or darkly or strongly colored. And what colors would that leave us with? White, off-white, light green. Now, I know I said, now there are exceptions to this, like with the beans. If you're going to eat black beans, I'm okay with that. Because there's a lot of soluble fiber in there waiting to soak up the polyphenols with the bile. Okay, so that's fruit. Vegetables, I'm not going to go through a list of vegetables. Seriously, I'm not going to sit here and argue about is it medium green or light green. Look, light green, you know it when you see it. Medium green, it's darker than light green. Dark green, those dark leafy greens they sold you on eating that tasted like garbage, avoid those. You don't have to eat them anymore. You can stop poisoning yourself with kale. Seaweed is one of the highest vitamin A foods out there. Don't eat it. I don't care about the iodine. Oh, we don't have a massive iodine deficiency in our low vitamin A, love your liver people. So what I believe is that the body's very good at recycling iodine as well. Like, why can't it just chop up a thyroid hormone and use the 3 or 4 iodines on it? Remember, you can't be technically allergic to iodine, or else you'd be allergic to every thyroid hormone in your body, because T3 means there's 3 iodines on it, and T4 means that there's 4 iodines on it. So, what other foods am I missing? I went over soluble fiber. Soluble fiber is to tolerance. I went over the minimum amounts of protein. Oh, let's go over fats and oils. Okay. I just went over this on Twitter today. Generally, well, let me back up a second. How do we create liver problems? How do scientists create cholestasis in studies, as in toxic leaky bile? There are 3 major dietary approaches that they use to induce liver injury, aka cholestasis, aka toxic leaky bile. One is a lack of protein. Okay, we've addressed that. 2 is excess sugar. We don't add sugar on this program. No, fruits are not a problem. I mean, show me somebody who's ever caused themselves a health problem from eating too many apples. No, show me, really. Go out and find them, please. And the last one is excess fat. Lack of protein, excess sugar, excess fat. Can you say standard American diet right here? How do we cause liver injury? How do we fix it? We do the opposite. It's not hard. We get enough protein. We don't add sugar. Oh, you should watch my glucose and dextrose episode if you haven't figured that out yet. Don't add fructose. Don't add glucose. Don't be afraid of fruit. It's not that hard. Then, so like what I'm saying is, if you're getting sugar from a whole fruit that is low vitamin A, you're okay. If you're spooning spoonfuls of sugar into water or whatever else to eat it, no, that's not okay. I don't care what sugar it is. Go ahead and tell me I'm wrong, and I'll just kind of roll my eyes at you and let you go cause yourself problems. And then you can come back and let me know that I was right. So, anyway. Oh, adding fats. Okay. Some of you are going to have to listen hard. You skinny people, underweight people. I'm not saying anything bad about you. I'm saying you guys need to listen hard here, because I'm going to talk about 2 different types of people here. There's going to be the overweight people, and there's going to be the underweight people. So when I'm talking in general, I'm talking to think about it this way. When you got sick, or as you were getting sick, did you tend towards gaining weight, or did you tend towards losing weight? There's a lot more of people who gain weight as they get sick. Those are what I call overtypes. And then there's the other people who tend to lose weight as they get sicker. They are both presentations of a sick liver. The underweight people, it's actually been shown that being underweight is a higher risk of mortality, of death, than being overweight. But they don't talk about it much because there's so few of the underweight people. I talk to them because I get the sickest people out there. And I can have 2 approaches for 2 different presentations of disease. I've been over this before. It's like alcoholism, right? When most people start drinking too much alcohol, do they gain weight? Yeah, they tend to get fat and edematous and bloated, and they just get bigger. And then what happens as their liver gets more and more damaged over time? Eventually, they start losing weight and they start looking sickly skinny, except for their big hard belly and their bloated red nose and their red face, right? They went from an overtype to an undertype, and that shows the development of liver problems. Underweight people are sicker. They're not as good at creating fat to store the toxins in. There's no judgment on any of this. That's what I call over and under types. And there's more to it. It's not just overweight versus underweight. It's not as simple as that, but I'm not going to explain the whole thing here. Just know, underweights, you have to pay attention here, because most of the time when you hear what I'm saying, I'm talking to the majority of the population, which is 95% of the people who would tend towards gaining weight as they get less well. So, first, if you're overweight, you don't need to add more fat to your diet. You're carrying around plenty. Your body wants to burn some fat, let it burn some of your own fat. You don't need to be putting oil on everything. Oil is a processed food. If you would actually say sugar is not a food, then don't say oil is a food. It's just processed stuff. Right? Use the same logic. Like if you're going to say sugar's not a food, then say collagen's not a food. Collagen is about as processed as proteins could get. I'm not saying we could never use these things, but I'm saying just be consistent. If you're going to, badmouth processed things, don't badmouth sugar and then shove protein powders and oils down your cake hole. Be consistent. But I'm also going to say that sources of food fats. So what are we going to say here? Food fats. Fats found in foods within our framework. Fats found within foods found in our framework. Sugars found within foods in our framework are okay. Should not be difficult. Or I forgot to go. Yeah, I'll get to nuts and seeds in a second. Adding the fewer fats and oils you can consume as an overtype, the better off you're going to be. Did I say this is a no-fat diet or a low-fat diet? No, I'm not saying those words at all. Anybody who puts that on me, you can't eat beef and be on a low-fat diet. You understand? I never say anything about low-fat. I just said fats in foods are fine. So eat your fats in the foods. And stop pouring freaking oil on things. Not that hard. If you're going to use oils or fats, as I went over on Twitter today, you first either need, there's two things you would love to have in it: organic, naturally refined. Why organic? Well, if they're spraying the crops with fat-soluble toxins, where do you think plants store those fat-soluble toxins? Well, they'd store them in their fat. What are oils? Extracted fats from plants. So organic oils would, by definition, right off the bat, have fewer fat-soluble toxins in their fat, which is the oil. Okay? Next, naturally refined. We don't want chemically refined. If you talk to a manufacturer and you say, is it naturally refined? And they say, well, it's refined, but blah, 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 blah. No, if they don't say it's naturally refined, you don't want it. But what does naturally refining an oil do? It removes free fatty acids. Free fatty acids are known in the research to be just straight inflammatory. Okay? They are. What does your body bind fat-soluble toxins to store them in your liver? Using choline, free fatty acids. So your body takes vitamin A as an example and a free fatty acid. It uses choline via the LRAT enzyme to bind them together to store them in your body fat or your liver. There are some people out there advocating eating eggs, which contain choline and vitamin A, perfect storage mechanism for vitamin A in your liver. It's not going to end well for them. I'm sorry they made that mistake. Hopefully they'll figure it out before they mess themselves up too bad, or other people with their bad advice. So then we get into naturally refining will remove the vitamin A. If you have ever seen a, let's say, as an example, seed oil that is naturally refined. Seed oils are commonly very, very yellow. What causes yellow color in plants? Oh, it's vitamin A. Carotenoids, specifically in plants. When you naturally refine an oil, you take away the yellow and you get a very clear oil. Oh, so we took out the vitamin A. Well, that's a good thing. Next, polyphenols. Polyphenols slow detox, remember. Naturally refining it will take out most of the polyphenols. And that's also why it becomes more clear. Avocado oil that is unrefined is very, very green. Avocado oil that is naturally refined, like Chosen Foods, is clear. So use either, so if you can find an organic and naturally refined oil together, perfect. If you can't, you're going to have to choose one of those. I don't really add that many fats to my foods in a week. Like once in a while when we make a kind of low vitamin A salad, guess what color it is? It's all light green or white. We will make some dressing with some avocado oil. That's about all the added fats I use in a week. I get my fats from food. Now, again, if you're overweight, you have plenty of fat to burn. Let's get started doing it. Stop pouring oil on things or adding fats to things. Undertypes. Those of you who have trouble maintaining weight, you may need to add some more fats to your diet at the start to get your calories up to where they need to be. Did I say overweight types should do this? No, I did not. I said underweight types can and possibly should do this. Do they have to? No. Here's another thing for you undertypes. You may want to gain weight, and I understand this. Your underweightness is a result of your liver problem. Okay? It's not because you don't most of the time. I'm going to say this. For people who are out there trying to recover their health and you're underweight, and let's say you're just shoving food in all the time and you can't gain any weight, or you eat 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day and you gain a pound, and it's such a pain for you to shove in all those calories and not gain any weight. You must first understand that your weight problem is not the cause of your health problems. Your liver is the cause of your health problems. Your liver is already not running well. It's running slow. Every bite of food you put in your mouth that you don't need to has to go through your detox system. Are you following me here? The more you load your, let's say, I'm going to give you an example here. Let's say you're underweight and you can maintain your weight just fine with, let's say, 3,000 calories a day. Okay. If you struggle to shove down 4,000 calories a day, you could, let's say, gain a pound or two. And it's a pain in the ass and you don't feel good doing it. What do you think it's doing to your liver for that pound or two of weight? The pound or two of weight is not making you any healthier. You actually feel worse. Do you understand? So don't do that to yourself. You're making your liver have to work harder. Just find the amount of food, of the right foods within our framework that you can eat to maintain your weight. We don't want you dropping weight, but we don't want you stuffing your cake hole all day to gain a pound. It's not worth it on your liver. You understand? So if you need a little bit of fats to make that work as an undertype, That's fine, because unders aren't very good at storing or making body fat, right? So maybe we add a little bit more fats to it so they can bind fat-soluble toxins to them, because that is actually one of the body's protective mechanisms. So if you can't make fat, you might have to eat some more. Now, if you misinterpret all of what I'm saying, maybe you're not ready for this work. And if you come back and you're like, well, I eat a ton of fat to store a bunch of, no, don't. We're minimal effective dose. Hopefully you guys watching this are wondering, are understanding why I haven't done this episode yet, because it's not just foodless. This is not just eat this, don't eat that. There are concepts and principles here. And there's different types of people, and there's different tolerances and things that people get along with. And so we have a framework to work within. So undertypes might need a little more fat added to their diet. Overtypes, if you're overweight, you don't need any extra fat diet added to your diet. So I think that's that. And no, I'm not going to give you gram amounts. Oh my God. There's a reason I didn't go into like become a nutritionist so I could just write food plans all day. That's like the lowest level. We're like up here. We're not down here in the weeds. Like you can have X amount of calories per day. If you want to start counting calories, that's fine. That may help you at some point. It's good to know how many grams of protein you're eating. It's good to know how many calories you feel best on. Do you need to obsess on it? If you can gut feel it and intuit it, just do that. Like, don't make your life like obsessing over data and numbers like, oh, like Mr. Brian Johnson, the guy obsessed with living as long as possible. He called his program the Don't Die program. Do you understand what your subconscious hears when you say don't die? Oh my goodness. What does he do? He eats tons of polyphenols. He eats hardly any protein. I'm pretty sure he takes essential fatty acids all day. He posted on Twitter the other day. He went out he went out for a night. He went dancing. He stayed up a little too late. And the next day he was wrecked. But he's like, my data and my measurements are all perfect for longevity or whatever. And then the next day he posts a tweet about shilling for a pharmaceutical product that supposedly is going to help you live longer. It's a trap. They're doing the opposite of what we're doing. He's going to crash and burn at some point. He couldn't even go out for a night of dancing and stay up a little late. I had somebody visit me for a week, and I will honestly say that at 48, I could have kept up with myself in my 20s. You don't have to believe me. It's true, though. I'm not like, I went out for one night. I went karaokeing. I went bar trivia. Oh man, spent a lot of time outside in the pool. Didn't get burned. Amazing. What we are doing here, once you start to get better and get past the toxicity that is making you not resilient, you will get more resilient. We've had multiple people on Twitter talk about how, not that I'm advocating alcohol. Alcohol is not part of this program. But we've had multiple people say that their alcohol tolerance, they don't drink on a regular basis, but their alcohol tolerance goes way up and their hangovers are almost non-existent. Now, again, are we advocating? We're not doing this program so you can go out and get drunk. I mean, I guess you could. The problem is, the challenge of the program is, we get you so much healthier that you have to drink a lot more alcohol to get a buzz. So it just starts costing you more money. And then you start going, I don't want to have to drink this much, this fast to try to get a buzz while I'm poisoning myself. That's really what happens. And then you start going, wow, I remember when the hangovers used to be really bad, and now I hardly have a hangover at all anymore. Like, what's going on? Your ALDH is running better. That's what we fix. Your whole liver detox system is running better. So you put the alcohol in it and it tears through it. It's not an ad. This is not marketing. Like I said, you should generally not be drinking alcohol in the program, but you're still a human and you're still going to go out and do whatever you think it is that gives you a good time. And you'll notice, like, alcohol is getting quite expensive these days, if you've noticed, along with everything else. And all of a sudden, if you have to go out and consume twice as much alcohol to get a buzz than you used to, that gets real pricey to poison yourself. But yeah, I had noticed this years ago doing this process. And then other people are noticing it and, commenting on Twitter. Some of you may comment in the chats about it. Okay, so we have how to identify, just a question I'm going to go over, things I didn't go over. So some other foods that we avoid. Let me aim this down a little bit. Some other foods that we avoid, not because of the vitamin A content. Not necessarily because of the vitamin A content. We avoid nightshades. I was an expert in nightshades before I became anti-vitamin D and before I became anti-vitamin A. Nightshades, toxic plant foods. Tomatoes of all colors. Potatoes. We'll talk about potatoes in detail. Peppers or capsicum, spicy or not. Eggplant. Goji berries. Tobacco. That's the basic list. Are there more to it? Yeah, actually, I was with somebody and they got a fruit plate and they brought it out and there was this little orangish, yellowish fruit on it that looked like a tiny tomato and it had the leaves around it. And the person I was with said, I think this is a gooseberry. And I was like, oh, that's a nightshade. It looked just like a little tomato. So those got left on the plate for sure. Nightshades are toxic. They contain vitamin A. They contain active vitamin D. They contain calcitriol. There's a reason why you feel like crap after nightshades. And if you don't feel like crap after nightshades, then you're probably really toxic and you're just not able to notice it. I can say as people get better, they're able to eat nightshades without feeling bad. But if they do it too many times in too close together, they will start feeling it again. They'll go, oh, this is why we don't eat those. So nightshades peppers have tons of vitamin A in them. Tomatoes have tons of vitamin A in them. Eggplant was regarded I think it was in Italy, that if you ate it every day for a month, you would go insane. Eggplant is like one of the most toxic nightshades out there, especially the skin. What color is the skin again? Oh, it's dark purple. Dark colors. Oh, so if you were gonna eat an eggplant, you better peel it. Oh my goodness. So we go to, well, that's nightshades. Just don't eat them. White potatoes. White potatoes contain solanine and alpha-chaconine, which are glycoalkaloids that are toxic to the point of there are case studies of entire schools in Ireland where they stored the potatoes wrong and the entire school went to the hospital. Okay. Potatoes are not an innocent nightshade. I'm also going to tell you that if you peel potatoes, if you're going to eat them, they are very high in potassium, which is nice. And if you get white potatoes, not yellow potatoes, but white potatoes, because what would yellow flesh potatoes have in them? Oh, vitamin A. If you get white flesh potatoes and you peel them very well, and by peeling them very well, I mean there is no skin on them. The potato is one color. This is a simple concept. There should be no other colors on that potato, and the potato sure better not have any greenish tint to it. You peel off all of the eyes very well. You cut out all the bruises. The potato should be, what you're going to eat should be one color. If it's not one color, you're leaving toxic stuff on there. Then, as the saying goes, you're going to cook the hell out of the potatoes. Cooking the hell out of the potatoes. Somebody said this was a Ray Peat line. I don't really care. You're going to cook it to break down as much of the toxic stuff as you can. I started saying that because somebody else said it. I don't know where it came from. But anyway, cook the hell out of them. But it's best so you don't create acrylamide like making French fries and stuff like that by adding oil to the starch and creating acrylamide. It's best to either instant pot them, like pressure cook them, or boil them. Now, potatoes are what I call the sneakiest nightshade. And what I mean by this is I will have people who will say, oh yeah, I don't feel good with the other nightshades, but I feel fine with potatoes. And I go, okay, here's what's going to happen. Then they're like, I eat potatoes like every day. And somebody might say, it's one of the few things I can eat. And I'm like, okay, so you're going to eat potatoes for now. Let me tell you what's going to happen. After a while, you're going to feel better eating them because you got more potassium and there's some low vitamin A and all that stuff. But over time, you're going to accumulate these glycoalkaloids in you, and you're going to have either old issues show up or new issues show up. And you're going to wonder why, because it's hard to track. Slow poisonings are the hardest to track, right? It's easy if you like take a new supplement and you're like, oh, I don't feel good. Well, that's easy to figure it out. But if you eat something every day and it takes months for it to show up and you're like, well, it can't be the potatoes because I eat those every day. I'm telling you, that's why I call potatoes the sneakiest nightshade. They sneak up on you. Like I used to eat salsa even when I knew about nightshades. And before I even left the Mexican restaurant, like my neck would be in so much pain. I'd been cracking my neck the whole meal because it started to stiffen up as soon as I started eating the salsa. And by the time I would leave the restaurant, my neck wouldn't crack anymore. And I was just in pain. And then I just said to myself, I took responsibility. I said, you just did this to yourself. Was it worth it? Is the juice worth the squeeze? So sometimes it was. Most of the time I started going, well, I don't want to feel this every day. So that's nightshades. Nightshades are toxic. If you were to look up Weston Price nightshades and my name, you'll find an article I wrote, I don't know, 2010 about the nightshades. Nightshades are toxic. Funny thing was I presented at that Weston Price conference. Chris Masterjohn was there talking about the next thing we're going to talk about, cruciferous vegetables. It's too bad that Masterjohn can't figure out that vitamin A is toxic. He just keeps poisoning himself and other people with his bad advice. Cruciferous vegetables. Broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, cabbage. You can look up I think radishes are in there. Okay. Just look up cruciferous vegetables or brassica, Brassica. They contain tons of sulfur. That's what. So did I already say the list? Broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, cabbage, and the other stuff. Tons of sulfur. That's why they stink when you cook them. Sulfur slows down detox. All of the cruciferous vegetables, other than the original mustard, are hybridized and made by man. They did not exist in nature by themselves. Humans created them through hybridization. You won't miss them. They're not that good to begin with. Now, if somebody wanted to eat a cruciferous vegetable as one of their choices of vegetables, you wanted to do some cauliflower or something, some white cauliflower, once in a while, not a big deal. Like, okay, backing up, will I eat potatoes on occasion that are prepared right? Yeah. Will I eat cauliflower or cauliflower rice on occasion? Yeah. I mix it with meat. It's actually cauliflower rice with like ground beef with some salt or 50-50 salt is really good. I'll eat it once in a while. It's a low vitamin A vegetable. Does it have sulfur in it? Yes. You still make all your choices. Like you can't, there are no perfect foods. Breathing is killing you slowly, but you got to breathe. Okay. eating foods, there are toxic things in every food you eat. You still have to eat. I just don't think that breatharian thing is going to happen. But then again, the oxygen is killing us too. So what we are trying to do is to make a diet that is as low toxin as possible. And what we are seeing is people healing because your detox system is actually really good if you stop overloading it. It's really all we're doing. We're just unloading the detox system. We're giving it less work to do. Wouldn't it be nice if your work, let's say you're overworked at work and they started giving you less work to do and you're like, oh my gosh, I can keep up now. I'm so much happier. I don't feel overloaded. That's what your liver does. So that's cruciferous vegetables. We do not eat cruciferous vegetables. We do not eat high sulfur plant foods. Then we have the allium vegetables. Basically the onions and garlic and chives and everything in the allium family. Super high in sulfur. Don't eat them. Think about when you smell garlic or onions on people's breath. That's a bad smell, right? How is it that you put garlic and onion into foods and you go, ooh, this smells so good, but when you smell it coming out of somebody's armpits or off their breath, you're like, ooh, this is so gross. This is disgusting. Don't eat those if you're going to kiss me. Why the hypocrisy? It's the same smell. Sulfur is behind your body odor issues for the most part. That's one of the ways they measure bad breath is hydrogen sulfide. And we all know, especially the teenagers who stink of onion BO. You won't smell less, eat less sulfur. What are the big sulfur foods that we avoid? Cruciferous vegetables, allium vegetables, dairy. Dairy is extremely high in sulfur, and dairy's long been associated with like bad breath. Then the last one is egg whites. Egg whites are very high in sulfur. Egg yolks are very high in vitamin A and choline. I think those are the big ones. I think that's the basics of it. Now, some people look at this and they go, this diet's too restrictive. And then I have other people come to me who have done all sorts of candida diets and other restrictive diets. And they're like, oh, this diet's like easy. We have people doing Grant's prison diet, the red meat and beans and rice. We have people doing the cowboy diet, which is just red meat and beans. We have people doing, I don't know, maybe I'll call it the Highlander diet, which is red meat and oats. We have some people, they don't do well on red meat, so they do mostly poultry. Okay. We have some people doing a very mixed approach like I do. I'm here to help you with this framework so that you can figure out what works for you. And if you do it right, let's say like an all muscle meat, a nose to tail carnivore poison themselves with vitamin A because they're doing it all the time. They poison themselves with vitamin A and they come here and they go, okay, so they're like, I can't tolerate fiber. I just can't. They can't tolerate carbs. They can't tolerate fiber. Boy, they painted themselves into a corner, didn't they? And then they go on red meat. They go to do the all muscle meat carnivore diet for a while. What will that help them do? Well, it's a very low copper and low vitamin A intake. So they're putting less toxins in. They don't have much fiber, so they're not pooping much out. So then we would start, as they get less toxic, because they will get rid of some toxicity just by existing and pooping and peeing. You don't ever want to think of peeing as a good way to get rid of toxicity. Your kidneys don't like it. Why do you think they have to do dialysis and put a whole new filter system on you to filter your blood? Your kidneys do not like to piss out bile. The way bile gets to the kidneys is through toxic leaky bile going into your bloodstream. The way you get skin issues, toxic leaky bile going through your bloodstream, coming out through your skin. You can detox these ways. You do detox these ways. You don't want them to be your major route. You want to poop out your bile. Oh, let me go over nuts and seeds real quick. I didn't really hit those. I'm not going to run over a huge thing on nuts and seeds. Generally, a lot of nuts and seeds are really high in oxalates. They also can tend to be high in, PUFAs. If they're cooked, they're oxidized oils. If you're going to do them, if you felt like you needed some more fat in your diet, some nuts and seeds would be an easy way to do it. They're also really high in copper. They're not a great choice. So if you're eating handfuls of nuts every day, the one nut we use for some people is Brazil nuts because they're high in selenium and we're using them as we really don't. So if you're not testing your hair test, you have no idea of how much selenium you're getting from Brazil nuts. But that selenium, Brazil nuts are also high in oxalates. So nuts and seeds, rarely. But if somebody knew, they were like, well, doc, I've been doing the vitamin A detox for a long time. Now, this is something that happens, so I'm just letting you guys know. Don't go and add fats at the start. It's not going to help. You're probably already eating way too much fat for what I'm about to talk about. People who do the diet properly for a while, sometimes they get to the point where they're like, doc, I've been doing this for a year or two or whatever, and I've been getting a little bit of dry skin. And I'll say, well, how much fat are you taking? And they're like, I don't add any fats. Sometimes they're like, I'm doing chicken breast and rice and whatever. And I'm like, okay, and they say, well, I think I might be on a little too low of fat. And I go, okay. Add a tablespoon of oil or a quarter cup of nuts. And then all of a sudden the dry skin just poof goes away. So could you do too little fat after you've detoxed for a while? Yeah. So you add a little bit of fat. It's not crazy. It doesn't mean everything I'm saying is wrong. Do I have to add fat to my diet? No, I eat beef. If you eat beef, you don't need to add any fat to your diet. Give me a break. Even if you drain your ground beef and you cut the fat off of your steaks, you're not on any fat deficiency if you're eating beef. But somebody who is doing chicken breast and grains and beans and not adding any fat to them, could that be a little too low of fat? Sure. Okay. Add the minimal effective dose of fats. Problem solved. But if you do that at the start of your detox, you're just adding more fuel to store more toxins in your system. We store fat-soluble toxins bound to fat. But see, so I'm just going to let you guys know, all sorts of people are going to misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm trying to make it absolutely crystal clear here, and user error is going to exist, and people are going to do the wrong thing and then say it doesn't work. I know what didn't work, and it was their interpretation of this. You don't feel good on any of the foods I mentioned, don't eat them. We talked about adjusting soluble fiber. We talked you can eat as much protein as you want, just don't get less than 50 grams. You want to eat, and what do you season your food with? What do I put on my food, Dr. Smith? Because you don't like herbs and spices and all this. Salt. A very clean salt, bright white in color, single ingredient. The best one I found out there that's the easiest to get is Jacobsen salt. Then I talked about 50-50 salt on the network. You can add potassium chloride to that salt, make your own mix. I'm exploring making that for people, but it hasn't even been sent to the supplement guy. So do not ask Julie. A bunch of you, just to let you know, I mentioned something here, and a bunch of you emailed Julie after I said not to. Come on now. If I say specifically, don't email Julie, that doesn't mean everybody else but not you. What is everybody going to be like? Well, I guess everybody else won't email her, but I'm going to ask her first so I can get early info. And I say, there's no info for you to get. Don't email Julie. Don't waste your time. Supplement manufacturers these days are absolutely incompetent in terms of getting stuff out. Unreal. I'm trying to make single ingredient things and they can't even get it out. So, lactoferrin's out again if you didn't know. We do have that back. So let's see. So I think that's the diet stuff, and I'll go through any more diet stuff as I hit these super chats. So Vince asks, any connection of this work to Stickler's syndrome? Well, clarify. Joe wants me to clarify the lactoferrin content. Lactoferrin's back in our nutrition detective lactoferrin is back in stock on the store. We finally got it back. We're gonna do our best to keep it in stock. Because it's a huge seller. We're making sure we don't run out of things as best we can from now on. But yeah, if you get the lactoferrin and you're new to it, make sure if you're not in the Love Your Liver program, well, you don't have access to the order of adding stuff, which is a really, really important document to read. And if, there's a link. There's information in the Love Your Liver program, and there's a link on the lactoferrin bottle to very specific instructions, a specific web page that I made, so you could read it and not overdo the lactoferrin and then say the lactoferrin made me feel bad because I jumped in at 1 full capsule a day and it was too strong for me. Yeah, it's probably going to be too strong for you. Lactoferrin is very strong. So read the instructions. Open the pill. Take a little bit start. So let me look up Stickler's syndrome because I'm actually not familiar with that condition. Let me see. Rarediseases.org. Let me go share my screen. Hold on, wrong one. There we go. Share screen. Okay. So one of the things is when we start finding diseases on the National Organization for Rare Disorders, there's not going to be a lot of research on it. That's just the way it is. Now, the more rare, the newer and the rarer the diseases are that shows up, yes, okay, so first thing we have to go over genetics. So they're going to say, I believe they say this is a genetic linked condition, which they love to say because they want you to be a victim. Here we go. 4 distinct forms of Stickler syndrome have been identified in the medical literature based on the location of the mutated gene, an inheritance pattern, and at least one other form exists with an as yet unknown mutation location. First described in the medical literature in 1965 by Gunnar Stickler et al., who called the disorder hereditary, genetic, progressive, it gets worse with time, arthro is joint, ophthalmopathy is eyes. So genetics loads the gun, environment pulls the trigger. Genetics loads the gun, environment pulls the trigger. You can have bad genetics, that doesn't express itself because you're not either getting toxicities or deficiencies that attack that weakness. So think of genetic diseases as a kind of inherited weak spot. But what do militaries do with their weak spot? They protect them. They know where they are. They hide them. They protect them. They do what they can to not let the enemy attack their weak spots. So what can we do? We avoid toxicities and we correct deficiencies that are often related to the weak spot. Now, I can tell you in the research, there's a lot of, so that's all the information they have on it. Wow. View full report. Let's see what this is. Let me go over to this one. Okay. Stickler syndrome refers to a group of disorders of connective tissue. Well, retinoic acid, vitamin A, attacks connective tissue. Copper will also mess up collagen. We've had people who have had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and improve a ton on it doing what we do. We do, I mean, the collagen is something that is built. So if you interfere with something that has to be built, you can make it weak. Eyes, ears, skeleton, and joints are most often affected. Well, eyes, what does vitamin A ruin? Eyes. Ears, and that's not something I see a lot of, but skeleton. Vitamin A actually eats away at bone. Vitamin A chops calcium out of bones, causes osteoporosis, osteopenia. Joints. Well, how many people here know that we've helped their joint pains improve? And what calcifies a lot? Joints. So what do we have here? One of the first signs of Stickler syndrome is nearsightedness. Boy, there's a bunch of people out there with that right now. Stickler syndrome is characterized by the following clinical features. Vitreoretinal. Oh, retinaldehyde. Vitreoretinal degeneration, myopia, cataracts. Have you seen my Twitter thread on cataracts? Let me find it for you. I'll switch screens in a sec, Joe. Oh, really? Can you believe this is, let me tell you how bad Twitter search engine is. Like, it's got to be on purpose. I type my handle from NutriDetect, and then I type cataract China. My Twitter search engine finds nothing. And then I type cataracts with an S, China, and I find it. Absolutely, like the worst. They make the search engines on social media bad on purpose. So you can't find your old stuff. So anyway, I have a whole thread here. I just posted it in the live chat about how in this one area of China, one of the few foods they have to eat is sweet potatoes. Talk about how the BBC covered it up in the later episode. They actually removed the word sweet from potatoes. So they took out the word sweet so you wouldn't know that it was a sweet potato and excess vitamin A accumulation. Grant Generous sent me this video. Anyway, this is the highest rate of cataracts in the world. And one of their staple foods, they don't get a lot of protein. And one of their staple foods is sweet potatoes. Highest rate of cataracts in the world. So you can read that post. So there's your cataracts, retinal holes and detachments. Again, that's just weakening of the eye, sensory neural hearing loss. I'm trying to remember if that was a vitamin A thing. Okay, a characteristic facial appearance with mid-facial flatness, small chin, long upper lip, palatal abnormalities, including cleft palate, bifid uvula or high arched palate. Okay. I do believe, let me go find, so I showed that one. Oh, did I not? Yeah, so sorry, I was reading that for a second, but I didn't switch. So here is a Twitter post of mine connecting cleft palate with vitamin A toxicity. Excess vitamin A can cause congenital malformations such as spina bifida and cleft palate and cleft lip. Research should focus specifically on effects of slight nutritional overexposure of vitamin A. So let's say a child is born vitamin A toxic, and then they, soon after birth, in their early years, they show up with these symptoms. Well, it's probably a combination of toxicities and deficiencies. Yeah. So we can connect cataracts to vitamin A toxicity. We can connect cleft lip and cleft palate to vitamin A toxicity. Let's go back in here. Musculoskeletal problems, including loose joints, scoliosis, chest deformities, a hip disorder of childhood, Early onset degenerative osteoarthritis, onset before age 40 years by X-ray, and mitral valve prolapse. Okay, let's just go into the let's just go do this. Let's do isotretinoin musculoskeletal PubMed. I think I've been over this stuff before. Well, I know I have. Let me give you this link. So here's what I'm saying. Important backup. Accutane is 13-cis-retinoic acid. Any vitamin A you eat in your body, some of it turns into isotretinoin. So if you eat vitamin A, you are eating effectively Accutane. There is no biochemical argument against this. They have found in people, normal people, who are not taking Accutane, they have found 13-cis-retinoic acid, aka isotretinoin, aka Accutane, in their blood and in their urine. If you are eating vitamin A, you are taking Accutane effectively. So let's just go look through this. So remember, we just saw musculoskeletal stuff. Of the 94 patients, 71 were female, 23 were male. 47.9% of the patients had arthralgia, that's joint pain. 53.2% had myalgia, that's muscle pain. 70.2% had low back pain. 11.7% had sacroiliitis, we've talked about this before, and 4.3% had tendinopathy. That's actually like degenerative changes of their tendons. 37.8% of 66 patients with low back pain had inflammatory pain, and 62.2% had mechanical pain. Bone marrow edema, inflammation and swelling of the bone marrow consistent with sacroiliitis, was detected by sacroiliac MRI in 11 patients with inflammatory back pain. The median total cumulative dose of isotretinoin was significantly higher in patients with low back pain than in patients without low back pain. Okay. Did I post the link? Sorry, there's that link. Let me get this other link. I don't think I posted it. So we got both of those. Let's just go over and see. Okay, share this one. Evaluation of musculoskeletal adverse effects in patients on systemic isotretinoin treatment, a cross-sectional study. So they were treated for on average 8.5 months. The dose was 0.6 plus or minus 0.1 milligrams per kilogram. Musculoskeletal side effects were seen in 49.5% of the patients. Back pain was reported during the treatment period in 78.7% patients. Was this the same guys? Is this the same guys? Akar, Sass, and Cope. Let me see. If it's the same guys, I'm not going to go over this again. No, these are different guys. Okay. Enthesitis. What is that? Hey, wait, let me highlight this and then we'll go. Okay. The moderate to severe back pain group received higher cumulative isotretinoin doses than the mild back pain group. VAS is what? Visual analog scale. That's like when you rank something 1 to 10, you like point to the number. The VAS scores were found to be correlated with age. So they had more pain. The older they were, the more pain they had. The older you get, the more toxicity you generally have because you've been exposed to more and your detox system has had more time to slow down. So you take a poison and you get more poisoned from the same dose. Sacroiliitis was diagnosed in 4 patients. 1 patient was diagnosed with enthesitis. I don't even know what that is. Enthesitis. Oh, enthesitis-related arthritis. Well, let's look that up. Here, we'll just go with this. Enthesitis-related arthritis is a type of juvenile idiopathic arthritis that affects joints and entheses, the connective tissue that it... Oh, come on. What is... Ugh, go back. Okay. Jeez, I'm not... Okay. Enthesitis-related arthritis is a form of juvenile idiopathic arthritis. Idiopathic means they can't figure out what causes it. Juvenile means youngsters. Didn't they just talk about arthritis showing up early in people? Enthesitis-related arthritis is one of several types of juvenile idiopathic arthritis. These childhood autoimmune conditions begin before the child's 16th birthday and can evolve, flare, or improve over time. Well, I think we found your... I think we found all of this. Early degenerative arthritis, early onset degenerative arthritis for 40-year-olds. Got all sorts of musculoskeletal problems. And the chest deformities, that would be like you're developing incorrectly because you're toxic. Autoimmunity is toxicity. Let me get that link. So there you go. I would say vitamin A toxicity is absolutely related to this. Some people are going to say, well, you don't have a direct study doing that. And I'm going to say, do you have any better ideas? And I'm like, no, but there's no studies to back up what you're saying. And I go, well, would you like to try something? Because your doctors are giving you nothing. And I can make these connections. And all they did was they gave a disease a different name, because it presented a little differently, because the recipe of toxicities and deficiencies was a little off for their normal conditions, and it's hitting younger and younger people because the parents are more toxic, and you hand down toxicities and deficiencies generation by generation. This is why we're seeing these things. Conventional medicine calls it genetic. If your mom and your dad and or both of your parents were toxic, and they hand you down a toxicity and or deficiency related set of diseases, they will call it genetic, because they absolutely cannot admit that they are behind and they are propagating the toxicities and deficiencies that you are suffering from. They must hide that at all costs, or everything falls apart. Because what is modern medicine? Poison, deficiency, toxicity. That's what they do. So that's what I got. I think you're in the right place, Vince. I think we can help you. I can't say that all the damage that has happened will fix itself depending upon how bad the situation is for yourself, or maybe one of your loved ones or your friends or whoever you're asking on behalf of. But I do think this is probably your best option. Okay. Wait, I think I jumped too far. Joe, you said there was 4 super chats. I saw Vince's. What's the next one? Oh, Mr. G. That's a good question. Are stomach aches and headaches caused by bile? I eat oatmeal and it goes away. Thanks. Okay, good question. Excellent question. Stomach aches generally are bile going back up into your stomach. Correct. So, what do we talk about oatmeal doing? Oatmeal is soluble fiber. Oatmeal soaks up bile. If the oatmeal is soaking up more bile than you dump when you eat it, you get relief from your symptoms. The other thing you could try if you wanted to not do oatmeal, Mr. G, is you could do some charcoal in water. Okay, so here's the thing about oats, right? Oats are already, how many, I haven't figured out how to say this the way I want to yet, but oats are already activated. The soluble fiber in the oats is already activated when you eat it because it's been hydrated, right? If you took the example here, if you took a capsule of oats, dry oats, and you swallowed it, the problem with capsules of soluble fiber, or let's say charcoal, is that if you are trying to treat any issue in your mouth or your throat or your esophagus or down to your stomach, is if it is, if the capsule doesn't dissolve until it's past your stomach, the soluble fiber or the charcoal can't absorb what's in your stomach because it was never exposed to it, right? You have to, first you'd have to expose it. Then it has to soak up enough water that the soluble fiber or the charcoal can adsorb things. And then it has to touch the thing to adsorb. So if you are trying to treat anything in your mouth or your throat or your esophagus or your stomach, it needs to be like charcoal in water or like oats that have already been soaked with water. They've soaked up their water. So yes, stomach ache, absolutely related to bile generally. Headaches, yes. So headaches are very related to vitamin A toxicity and copper toxicity. They're classic symptoms of both. So hold on. Classic symptoms of both, it is bile in your blood. So if you were to take oats, well, oats are actually decent in potassium. I forget how much it was on Coach's Oats. It actually says how much potassium is. So potassium often helps headaches. A lot of the toxic things in bile deplete potassium or block potassium channels. So oats can soak up. So think of it as you eat oats. Let's say you were, if the stomach ache and the headaches come around the same time, or like if they're kind of linked, then what that means is that they may not be linked, but they may come together. If they come together, what happened was somehow, for whatever reason, you triggered a bile dump. They happen normally. They happen when you eat. They happen when, exercise can cause a bile dump. Sun can cause a bile dump. Heat can cause a bile dump. Stress can cause a bile dump. Soluble fiber can cause a bile dump. Coffee can cause a bile dump. Like all sorts of things can cause bile dumping. But again, remember this, the bile dumping is the cause of your problems and the solution to your problems, because this is what's making you toxic internally. You're toxifying yourself. And also getting rid of the bile is how you get untoxic. So we have to balance the dumping so that you don't dump so much that you overflow it into your system. You want to try to get rid of it as much as possible and not aggravate your symptoms. So let's just say that the stomach ache and the headaches came together. With the stomach ache, the bile is going back up into your stomach. With the headache, the bile has leaked into your bloodstream, and it has now made its way up to your head, your brain. So when you do the oats, they soak up bile. They've also got potassium in them, and they also soak up bile. So the bile that's circulating in your enterohepatic circulation from your gut to your liver and back and forth, the oats are going to soak up the bile, some of the bile in your stomach, could relieve the stomach ache. And if the headache came at the same time, I would guess that it would take a while for the headache to get relief, because those oats have to make it their way down into your digestive system and soak it up there too. So if they happen separately and you can use the oats to solve them both, then you know that both of them are related to bile. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. But yes, absolutely, they can be connected. And yeah, this is what binders do, folks. Like soluble fiber is a binder, charcoal is a binder. So like Mr. G, if you didn't want to eat something and you knew that you tolerated charcoal, you could just drink a glass of charcoal water. And that would, like, if you just had a stomach ache, that would likely get rid of it too. That's what I got. I missed Zen Dog Breath's question. He always loves to ask funny things. He says, have you looked at microdosing nicotinic acid yet? No, I have not. Well, I mean, I started, okay, so when I started taking nicotinic acid, did I follow my own guidelines? I absolutely did. I got the 25 milligram pills from Dr. Clark's, and I started at 125 milligram pill a day because I knew from my past that I used to flush at 50 milligrams a day because that was the smallest pill I could buy at the grocery store or at Sprouts or whatever it was, or at Natural Grocers, or I don't know, the place that was closest to me. I just went there and I'm like, do you have flush niacin? And they said, yeah, we got this 50 milligram. And I was trying to, back then, I still believed in the nonsense of methylation science. If I posted on Twitter this week about how Merck is behind your methylated B vitamins. Methylated B vitamin science is Merck science. If you believe you have methylation problems, you have, Kelsey can show you the research on this, you have nicotinic acid deficiency, you have NAD deficiency, and you likely have toxicity problems, and you likely have other deficiency problems going on. I used to flush at 50, I think I actually flushed at 25 milligrams. The first time I took a 25 milligram pill, I flushed. And then as I experimented my way up, I went from the 25s and I was taking a bunch of them in a day. I think I was taking 250. So I was taking 10 of those 25s. And then I jumped to the 500. And then I just started jumping after that. And because I got used to the flush is, don't punish yourself with the flush, but don't avoid it. You're tougher than that. Come on. This is actually a detox. The flush is a detox. So just like we talked, don't push it too hard, but also don't be like a sissy and avoid it. Okay. Don't, come on. You're tougher than you think. If it's causing you to dump too much bile though, then you need to back off. But microdosing nicotinic acid, technically I could say I have microdosed it. I did 25 milligrams. We're working on our own niacin right now. Is it out yet? No. Should you ask Julie? No. We're going to be doing all sorts of fun stuff with Kelsey, crossing over with all the niacin stuff with Kelsey's store and our store and all that fun stuff. So, but microdosing, let's just talk for a second about microdosing mushrooms. Like, seriously, don't do that. Microdosing drugs, don't do it. Everybody I've seen, I know several people who did it. They all eventually developed that weird zoned out look of people who do too many hallucinogens. Some people say that hallucinogens are great opportunities for demons and spirits to come in and settle into your system. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think it's quite possible. So doing that every day, that'd be like you're setting yourself up as a big target if you were to believe in that. Yeah. Let me see. Okay, Sam, oh, sorry. Thank you everybody for the super chats before this, but Sam Vandermeeren asks, I put my 11-year-old no health issues on the diet. 6 months in, she faces nausea, vomiting, insomnia when she cheats, as in like a restaurant. Is this something you see in clients, or is it due to an immature liver? Well, I don't know that I'd say an immature liver. Something she's eating is definitely causing, I mean, okay, a lot of people, as they do this program, like, we get better at the things we do a lot of, right? The SAID principle, the specific adaptation to imposed demands. We can do that in our diet too. So let's say people are eating a really high fat diet and their body kind of gets used to it. They're adapted to it. That doesn't mean it's good, right? Because people can drink tons of alcohol and then be like a functional alcoholic all day. And that's not a good thing. right? So you can adapt to anything. Humans are amazingly adaptable and resilient. I want you to think of how many different ways they're trying to poison us right now. And humans are still doing generally okay. I mean, there's a lot of sickness and disease, but think of how many ways they have to try to poison us. How many ways they are poisoning us. Like, and people aren't just dropping dead on the street all the time. I mean, although there was the pokies that, kind of did have people just keeling over. So if you start eating a lowered fat diet, and then you go and you eat restaurant food, that is, remember, restaurants want you to like their food. They don't give a shit about your health. They just want to hit as many of the fun and good taste receptors that we're all addicted to. Most people who are addicted to really tasty food are getting their dopamine hits from the food. They're addicted to the dopamine hits they get from the food. So if we start taking that away and people are getting less fat, less herbs and spices, less of this stuff, and you go to a restaurant and you eat a bunch of soy and canola French fries, so you get a massive dose of fat, of crap fats, and her body, I mean, think about it, nausea and vomiting, her body's saying, reject this, right? It doesn't want it. I mean, why would our body, if our bodies are intelligent, children's bodies are more intelligent than ours generally, and they detox better. So if she's eating something her body really doesn't want. And that's like me at the Mexican restaurant where I said, "Is this worth it?" Like, I know for breakfast, I do not tolerate high amounts of fat. So most restaurants that serve breakfast, it's tons of fat. So I don't choose things that are high in fat at breakfast. I can eat tons of fat at dinner. But in the morning, my body's like, it doesn't sit well. Does that mean I'm weak? No, I just know that, like, in the morning, my body's like, I don't want to eat a bunch of fat. Give me some time to wake up first. Especially not if you're going to put down like crap fats like they serve at restaurants. So I think it's more of just, it's an amount of fat thing. I mean, the goal is not for people to eat restaurant food, right? Restaurants are not serving healthy food. So in a certain way, there's something in that food that she is not getting along with that is causing her bile to reflux into her stomach. I think it's her body saying, don't eat this. I don't think it's a terrible thing. I mean, is our goal to be able to tolerate like GMO garbage, Zog slop? That's not my goal. I mean, I know we still have to eat out. We all have to eat out at some point. I think better choices may need to be made in her case so that she doesn't, unless she thinks the juice is worth the squeeze, which the last thing sometimes I've had nausea or whatever from whatever happens. And I know that one of the solutions is you can always stick your finger down your throat, move that bile out. That is the absolute last thing I'm ever going to do. Like, I have to feel so bad to ever even consider that. Vomiting is not fun. Some people can do it, no problem. They're like, yeah, just get rid of it. And I go, no. I tend to not stick my finger down my throat. I tend to not stick tubes up my butt. If you've been really sick and those things were part of helping you to feel less sick, that's fine. There's no judgment. I'm just not that guy. So I wish I don't do. Is it due to an immature liver? I mean, her liver doesn't. As Grant talked about, the theory of Grant's was that a lot of kids somehow all of a sudden start to get better from their vitamin A toxicity symptoms. And I showed in the liver biopsy studies, like it was the younger kids, and then you got like above maybe 40. And that's where you saw it. So the kids like under 10 and the adults over 40 had the highest amount of vitamin A in their liver. The kids at like 10 years old and under, some of them had obscene amounts of vitamin A in their liver. obscene. Like they put the adults to shame. One of Grant's theories about why sometimes these childhood vitamin A toxicity diseases go away is because the liver starts growing three-dimensionally, right? It's growing front, back, side, up and down. And all of a sudden you're making new liver tissue that is free of toxicity, or you're taking whatever toxicity was in the liver and you're diluting it as the liver grows. So the amount of toxicity per unit shrinks. Like the liver still has that much toxicity in it, but the amount per cell is less. Does that make sense? So then some of the liver has more storage area for vitamin A. And maybe their diet changed a bit as they grew up. Maybe their parents stopped feeding them sweet potato baby food and cod liver oil and all these nasty things. So that stuff. Yeah. I would just, it's something I see in clients. I mean, some people, here's the thing. People can become, we have a couple things going on. Like I was saying about Brian Johnson wrecking himself over one night of dancing versus me, and I'm going like 8 days having a good time with visitors in town and being like I was in my 20s. That's like increased resilience, right? There's another thing to think about though, that is not, some people might interpret it as decreased resilience, but it's really not. Like your daughter, she's going and she's eating. I don't know what you guys choose at the restaurant, but I'm just going to assume that it's restaurant food. It's like Cisco stuff. It's canola oil, soy oil, whatever the bullshit is they put in Zog slop restaurant food. I'm assuming it's not like an organic, like grass-fed restaurant. I'm making assumptions. Or like when I go and I eat a high-fat breakfast and my body's like, just don't do this. It's just going to go, it's just going to go right through you. Like don't do it now. Like don't do it now. Later's fine. Don't do it now. Okay. And I can just listen to my body and go, not the time. Not going to do it. I will feel better if I don't eat restaurant food, especially high-fat stuff at this time. So why do kids like white foods? Why do they like foods that aren't brightly colored? Why do they like foods that aren't bitter or sour or spicy? Kids don't like these foods because they're more in tune with their intuitive toxin sensors, which is your taste and your smell and your sight. So they avoid these things. Now, kids can be corrupted. Like you start giving your kids a bunch of sugar and, oh my gosh, my kids like sugary things. That must mean that their intuition says to eat sugary things. No, don't do that. How do we corrupt our tastes? By exposure therapy. You think any kid would like black coffee when they're first exposed to it? You think any kid would like dark, like 100% dark chocolate when they first are exposed to it? No. So you sweeten it up and you add dairy to it, and all of a sudden they go, ooh, this is tasty, and then they eat and drink more of it because you've masked the poison taste with sugars. What do restaurants do? They add sugars and fats and salt and tons of that stuff to just make things taste good. So I don't know. I would have your daughter listen to her body. I mean, nobody's going to say that restaurant food is better than homemade food. So, but there's you got to differentiate as you start to feel better. Here's the thing. As you start to get better, you have to differentiate between resilience and understanding your body's signals better. So if you start to feel better, you lose your tolerance for feeling bad. You understand what I'm saying? As you feel better, your tolerance for feeling bad, doing the wrong things, becomes less because you have a bigger contrast between you're feeling good up here versus doing the wrong things and feeling bad down here. And this gap, you're like, I don't like this. I like this. Like I know eating 2 bananas a day is key to me being up here. If I don't, I'm closer to down here. So does that mean I lost resilience? No, it means I just know what fuel works better. If I go to breakfast and I get steel-cut oatmeal at this restaurant I like to go to, not only do I know there's not a bunch of nasty oils in it, but I get a bunch of fiber and it's relatively lower in fat and everything goes fine in my morning. I just know what makes me feel better. And then I can do other things later in the day. So it's the tolerance of not feeling good goes down. Now, your daughter's body tolerance of these foods, your daughter's body may just be like, do not do this. I would guess if she ate it over and over again, you'd probably make her more toxic. You do exposure therapy to it, she'd get better at eating restaurant food. Is that what we want? I don't think so. So that's what I got on that. Sam says, what to do about endotoxins from bacteria? Our approach, first of all, lipopolysaccharides, endotoxins. This is I'm trying to remember what I've been over before, but basically endotoxins are an issue in leaky gut. What causes leaky gut? Toxic bile. What do we fix? Toxic bile. So do we fix leaky gut? Yes. So then do endotoxins become as much of an issue? No. Also, endotoxins are related to the gut biome. What ruins the gut biome? Toxic bile, vitamin A. What do we fix? Toxic bile, vitamin A. So then the gut biome changes and it's going to make less endotoxin. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. It's just, this is not something that, it's a secondary concern. It's just a secondary concern. It's not our primary concern. Because then if you start looking at the research on there's a group out there making terrible decisions on their diet because they obsess over endotoxin. We get people's guts better without ever talking about endotoxin, because what we do fixes the root causes of the problems. Endotoxin is a of things happening. It's not a cause. So endotoxins in the gut are an effect of things you do. They're a result of things you do. They're not a cause. Okay. Let me see that again. And again, thank you for everybody for the super chats. Okay, Monica CP, thank you for the super chat, Monica. She says, what about this hype about this C15 longevity related fatty acid, especially in blue zone diets? Thank you. The blue zone research, let me not mince words. Blue zone research is absolute horse shit that should be thrown in the garbage. Let me find Mike Roberto's. Mike Roberto is a vitamin A. He's a love your liver guy. He wrote a great article. Yes, here we go. Mike Roberto on Twitter, he's kind of become like the beta carotene disrespecter, like premier. Like he goes through the research and just destroys beta carotene. Absolutely amazing what he does. So anyway, yeah, so he's got this whole article. Are blue zones based upon fraud? New research may suggest. So yeah, did I post this link? Yes. The people who are living a long time in the blue zones are lying about their age. Blue zones are based on lies. So anyway, check this article out. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. If it's longevity, let me put it to you this way. If it's longevity research being presented in the mainstream, it's a lie and you should do the opposite. It's quite simple. Like when they tried to badmouth niacin about the 2-PY and the 4-PY, and they didn't tell you that that was niacinamide created, and that nicotinic acid or flush niacin has nothing to do with 2-PY and 4-PY. But what do they promote in the mainstream headlines? Niacin is associated with heart disease and these 2-PY and 4-PY. It was a lie. It was misinformation. It was niacinamide. So they will lie to you directly to your face, and they will feed you fraudulent research. Now, I will say this. There was one longevity study where I think they looked at 6 different countries, and they got to the end of it, and they were like, well, we couldn't really find anything in common among these countries, except they all ate lentils. Lentils are what? A bean. Beans contain what? Soluble fiber. Soluble fiber does what? Adsorbs bile and helps you poop it out, so it helps you to detox. What a weird coincidence. I believe the Mediterranean diet eats, the actual Mediterranean diet over there, they actually do consume quite a few beans. So. Oh, I see. Yes, Kelsey has joined us in the chat. So yeah, so Monica, I'm not getting into the C15 stuff. Yeah, it's just mainstream garbage. It's like the Brian Johnson stuff where he's eating like hardly any protein and tons of polyphenols and essential fatty acids and getting vaccinated, and his son vaccinated, and then he's getting blood injected into him from his son. This is longevity. Oh my gosh. Hi, Kelsey. So I did mention your store opened again today. So yeah, go check out Kelsey's store. It's in the video info below this, and I'm sure she'll post it in the chat. She's got some new stuff coming out. Like I said, I just took my Niasoda here, the zinc niacinate. We're doing experiments with potential sunscreens with the zinc niacinate. So we've got lots of interesting stuff we're working on. Hey, should you email Julie about any of this stuff? No. I'm going to have Julie tell me who emails her, so I can start keeping track of it. Okay. So I know who listens. What are we at? We're at 1 o'clock. Oh boy, I got to get to the inner circle. Okay. Baptized in Fire says, I wonder if acne is related. I think that's all the super chats. Did I get all the super chats? Let's see. Let me just make sure. Yeah, I think we're good on there. So I wonder if acne is, Baptized in Fire says, I wonder if acne is related to copper detox through the skin. Can't recall what made me think that, but I wonder. Okay. Vitamin A and copper toxicity come together. I found a video. I found a paper. I'm not going to go look it up right now, but when they gave mice or rats more calcium in their diet, their blood copper went up. Well, what does vitamin A do in the body? Well, it sucks calcium out of your bones. It cuts calcium out of your bones. And where does that calcium then go? It goes into your blood. So what does vitamin A effectively do? What will vitamin A toxicity cause in people? Hypercalcemia. You can look it up. So high calcium in the blood would then cause the body to retain more copper in the system, which would then lead to more copper toxicity. These are the logical jumps that we make based on our observations that vitamin A toxicity and calcium and copper toxicity come together. And then in all these diseases, you can find excessive calcium deposits. That's how they find your diseases on x-rays and CT scans, folks. They find calcifications of your soft tissue. Calcium where it's not supposed to be. Vitamin D supplements cause this. Vitamin A toxicity causes this. Copper causes this. And a lack of magnesium causes this. And then taking in too much calcium from like suckling cow udders causes this. Just the way it is. So okay, so do I think acne is related to copper and vitamin A together? Yes. Do I see zinc tend to help with acne? Yes. Zinc is a copper antagonist. Zinc is necessary to make retinol binding protein, which helps your body protect itself from vitamin A toxicity. So zinc deficiency is related to copper toxicity and vitamin A toxicity. Zinc helps acne, which means it's probably counteracting the copper and the vitamin A. So do I think it's all connected? Yes. We don't have to, remember, we don't have to have one cause. People who try to pigeonhole this work into just vitamin A obviously haven't watched anything I've done. So we're not just at one thing. Yeah. I was writing a tweet. I didn't finish it, but guess what? I did a whole video, I think, here on YouTube about how copper toxicity is linked to diabetes and metabolic syndrome. And last night, as I do, I had a little muse thought. I went, I wonder if metformin binds copper. And that's why they say it helps with diabetes and longevity. Am I suggesting anybody take metformin? No, I'm suggesting you would throw that in the garbage. I'm using it to show you an example. Turns out there's 3 studies showing that metformin acts as a copper binding compound. What a weird coincidence that they're saying they want to connect metformin with, helping with blood sugar regulation and with longevity, and it binds to toxic copper. And then if you look in the research, inositol, when they put myo-inositol, head-to-head against metformin, they find that it works just as good. And then I could show you 3 studies on fish that inositol protected the fish against copper toxicity in the water. Now, some people want a direct study linking the exact 2 things, and you're not going to get it. But I'm here to connect these things so that we can understand them, and then we can go, oh, yeah, copper is bad. It's bad, okay? So what do we do to fix that? Well, we make sure we get enough zinc and molybdenum and selenium, and we're doing more experiments with some other compounds. And you don't take in a bunch of copper, and you don't take in a bunch of manganese, and you just don't take in a bunch of vitamin A, and then we see these things start to resolve. So and Rustica, what are you saying? You don't detox copper, it stays lodged until you need it? I'm gonna say I have to disagree with that. Do you know that I saw a gentleman the other day? I saw his labs. His blood copper was 35. Super low. He has no copper deficiency symptoms. Weird. He takes zinc every day. If he had low blood copper and he's taking zinc, which is a copper antagonist, and he's taking selenium, and he's taking molybdenum, all of these copper antagonists, he should be making himself worse. He should be showing outright copper deficiency symptoms. He is not. I'm not going to outright say that our bodies don't need copper, but as we keep getting certain people's copper levels lower and lower and they don't show problems, let's just say I have my doubts. If you want to believe that copper is necessary and good, go ahead. Remember my name. And remember, this is not a game. So if you bet wrong, copper is the hardest and longest thing to detox out of the system. So the more you put in, the longer the painful ride is going to be back out. You don't have to believe me, though. Casper said, honey is fine. I'm going to say we have lots of people in the program who used to eat tons of honey, and they would probably disagree that it's just fine. So added sugar is not the way to health. We are getting copper levels down. We would very normally see what would be considered on the normal hair mineral analysis people who don't understand what they're doing. We would very normally see low copper levels on a hair test. And we are getting plenty of people to the low normal or low areas of copper in the serum, and they are fine. So we just keep breaking all these nutrition laws. Why are they so wrong? Is it maybe corrupted research, misinterpreted research, or are they trying to make you sick, crazy, infertile, and dead early while they squeeze as much money out of you in the medical system as they possibly can before you expire? And then they take your money after you're dead too, with the inheritance tax and all of that. So, oh, Zendog asked, did I use the derp voice, my derp or derp? Did I use my derp voice in karaoke? No. What I sang, I did a duet. I sang Picture with the Kid Rock and Sheryl Crow song with someone. And I did Pearl Jam's Elderly Woman Behind the Counter in a Small Town, or whatever the full name of that song is. It's so long. And I did Frank Sinatra's New York, New York, which that's like my song. I usually get some applause after that one. I'm pretty good at that one. Brian Johnson is the new Dave Asprey. If Dave Asprey is what people look like after TRT therapy, I don't want it. That's all I know. Somebody said on Twitter that Dave Asprey looks like the old lesbian bookstore owner. And I looked at him again and I cracked up. It was hilarious because he does. I think and Rustica says, why not biopsy tissue and bone for copper levels? Are you your comments are treading on a very thin line. You're treading on a very thin line here. I know you've been coming here for a long time, but your comments are getting out of order, if you will. They would not do liver biopsy studies for vitamin A toxicity because they considered them unethical to do unless medically necessary. And you're talking about me doing like punch biopsies of skin and bone to look for copper levels in fairly normal people? And if I don't, somehow I can't demonstrate my point. I've had clients in 29 countries now. I've built my reputation on hair tests, and I added some blood tests, and I show copper toxicity in blood tests and hair tests based on my standards all the time, and I get them down, and we have people improve. I am getting results. Here's the idea, folks. So let's go over the example with vitamin A. Vitamin A is stored in the liver and the body fat. Now, if we put people on a very low vitamin A diet and their vitamin A level does not go down, it stays very steady for years, even though they are not consuming it. What then is maintaining the blood vitamin A level? It's not from the food. It must be coming out of storage. Therefore, we can assume with the tools that we have and the observations that we use that it must be coming out of storage. And at some point, it goes to below lab detection limits. And that's when we can say we have probably emptied out most of the storage. We are seeing copper levels after we antagonize copper more than anybody out there. Okay. Yeah. Whatever. Now you just get ignored. Okay. We're going to wrap it up. I'm going to decide whether N. rustica gets to stick around or not. And so hope you all enjoyed that. We will continue antagonizing copper and seeing levels go down and seeing people get better. We will keep reducing people's vitamin A intakes. We will keep minimizing sulfur. We will keep avoiding and minimizing polyphenols. We'll just keep getting people better. And we won't worry about tools that we don't have access to. So hope you all enjoyed that. Finally, I got that done. And I will see you all next week. Have a good time. Bye.